Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Beautiful Sunday here in New York, July 21st. Just gorgeous weather, and just a beautiful day. Anyway, tomorrow, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle will testify before Congress. I think we've all been wondering, when is this going to occur? I don't think there's anyone that can look at this attempted assassination on former President Donald Trump and the 3 additional people shot, that anyone could look at this and say it was a beautiful, shining moment for the Secret Service. It's an ugly, ugly stain on that proud organization's record over the years. And so many mistakes were made that it's so hard to really describe how a professional organization like this could have erred so badly in so many aspects of this horrible assassination attempt. Now, tomorrow, when Ms. Cheatle testifies, let's hope that it'll, besides putting responsibility where it belongs on the director of the Secret Service, let's hope it just doesn't become about attacking her. Let's hope that we get some facts out there that we haven't heard yet from our government. And, we're getting a lot of outstanding coverage from the media, but how do we know what is true and what is false and what is hearsay? We don't know. So we, as citizens, I think, deserve to get this from the horse's mouth and really hear what happened. Why did this happen? And do we have confidence going forward, A, in Director Cheatle, and B, in the Secret Service period, and the ability of the FBI to do a thorough investigation of this, and a transparent investigation in regards to this case? Because there are many people that are out there spewing forth conspiracy theories, wondering what was the shooter here. A lone wolf? Was Thomas Crooks a lone wolf, or did he have help? That doesn't mean there was another shooter at the location, although there's many now non-experts saying there's different sounds, different gunshot sounds, and ballistics experts are telling us that there was many more. Well, we know there was at least the gun of the would-be sniper, Thomas Crooks, the assassin, not sniper, and there was at least 2 other snipers that fired shots. So there's 3 guns right there. Are we differentiating between the sounds of those guns? So there's many questions to be asked. So folks, hang on to your hats. Hang on to your loved ones. Hang on to your service dog. Hang on to your sensibilities. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have a car stopped in 10th and Ranch, Michael by there.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Folks, according to the New York Times, this is taken right from the New York Times, the Secret Service Director will testify before Congress on Monday. It will be Kimberly A. Cheatle's first appearance before lawmakers since the assassination attempt on former President Trump's life. The Director of the Secret Service, Kimberly A. Cheatle, will appear before lawmakers for the first time on Monday as scrutiny intensifies over the security failures at the Pennsylvania rally where a gunman tried to kill former President Donald J. Trump, the agency announced on Friday. The Secret Service is fully accountable for the safety of its protectees. We are committed to better understanding what happened before, during, and after the assassination attempt of former President Trump to ensure it never happens again. Anthony Guglielmi, spokesman for the agency, wrote on social media on Friday. As of Thursday, it was unclear whether Ms. Cheatle would appear before the committee. A letter sent by the Department of Homeland Security to lawmakers on Wednesday had urged the committee to allow for a later hearing date to give her more time to prepare. Regardless, lawmakers on Friday said the hearing would take place on Monday as scheduled. Americans have many serious questions about the historic security failures that occurred at the campaign rally in Butler, PA, wrote Representative James Arcoma, Republican of Kentucky, and Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, in a statement they made on Friday. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle must appear before the House Oversight Committee without delay on Monday, July 22nd, to answer on many questions and provide the transparency and accountability that Americans deserve and are at the foundation of our government. Mr. Trump, as we know, was injured when Thomas Matthew Crooks, 20 years old, of Bethel Park, PA, shot at him from a nearby warehouse roof during the campaign rally on Saturday. One attendee was killed and two more were injured. A Secret Service counter sniper shot and killed Mr. Crooks at the scene. Ms. Cheatle has been sharply criticized by top Republican lawmakers who have said she needed to be removed from the post immediately. Biden administration officials have publicly backed Ms. Cheatle. I will tell you that my confidence in Kim is 100%, Alejandro N. Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, said in an interview earlier this week. Ms. Cheatle is a longtime Secret Service official who has served in various roles at the agency. President Biden, appointing Ms. Cheatle, said that she had his complete trust. Now, I don't know whether the American people have her complete trust. And I don't know whether the American people are satisfied that it's taken this long to address the many failures that occurred at this rally. 4 people shot, 1 dead, a former president within centimeters of losing his life, 2 other individuals critically wounded. We can't call that a success by any stretch of the imagination. And the fact that it's taken so long for our government officials to get back to us as in regards to what the hell happened here is distressing. It's absolutely distressing. This is a press statement put out by the United States Secret Service. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle will testify before the House Committee on Oversight on Monday. The Secret Service is fully accountable for the safety of its protectees. We are committed to better understanding what happened before, during, and after the assassination attempt of former President Trump to ensure it will never happen again. That includes complete cooperation with Congress, the FBI, and other relevant investigations. So this hearing hopefully will shed some light on what the mistakes were and how do they explain these mistakes? And what we all expect, I guess, as Americans, is we expect someone to pay the price for this. I would be remiss in saying I don't believe that Ms. Cheatle is going to survive very much longer. I think it's going to be demanded that she be removed, and whether they stick with her or not is another thing. But I think that that's what people are expecting. A huge failure like this, the person at the top has to go. That's just the way it is. Let's listen to George Stephanopoulos with Alejandro Mayorkas.
We're going to be joined now by Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. I believe there he is. Okay, Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us this morning. We just heard a little bit about the investigation. I think a lot of people are having questions about how a gunman could get up to the roof with a clear line of sight on the president. You oversee the Secret Service. What went wrong? What's being done about it?
George, let me at the very outset echo President Biden's important words of yesterday evening. We are so very grateful that former President Trump is okay. Our hearts are with the Comperator family that lost a father and a husband, and we are praying for those injured for a full and speedy recovery. George, a direct line of sight like that to the former president should not occur. That is precisely why President Biden directed that an independent review of the incident occur. That will be done in close coordination with the FBI, which is conducting a separate criminal investigation, the importance of which cannot be overstated. We have to learn everything about the assailant, who, of course, the Secret Service so bravely and heroically neutralized. And we are going to really study the event independently and make recommendations to the Secret Service and to me so that we can assure the safety and security of our protectees, which is one of our most vital missions in the Secret Service, the Department of Homeland Security, and across the government.
What do you mean independently?
It is very important that the facts be learned by an independent body outside of the Department of Homeland Security so that the integrity of the investigative process and the conclusions reached and the recommendations made have the full confidence of the government and the American public. And we intend to be transparent with respect to the findings and recommendations of the independent review.
You also received a letter from the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee that suggests your department may have, quote, rebuffed multiple requests from President Trump's security detail to increase protective resources. How do you respond to that?
That is unequivocally false assertion. We keep very close watch on a very dynamic threat environment. The president, the former president, are commonly consistently under threat. We take every single threat seriously. We make security adjustments as are warranted. We had enhanced security for the former president beginning at least in June. We have not received any requests for additional security measures that were rebuffed. That assertion is unequivocally false.
And you're confident the Republican National Convention is now secure?
We have been planning for the security of the Republican National Convention for 18 months. It is a national security special event. We work very closely, not only with our federal government partners, but with state and local authorities to ensure the safety and security of the RNC.
Mr. Secretary, thanks for your time.
I just hope that tomorrow when they have these hearings, it just doesn't become so partisan that they don't get the truth out, because that's what we as citizens all want to hear. We want to hear the truth from the government, but something that the government doesn't always tell us the truth. So, there are numerous reports that Alejandro Mayorkas just denied that Trump's security detail had been cut back. And there was also reports that other police departments in Pennsylvania offered personnel and were turned down, that they didn't need them. And apparently there was a total of 80 personnel working this rally where there was over 20,000 people there. That's not enough security personnel, 80 for 20,000 people. So if other departments offered their assistance in this, securing this location and securing the former president, I believe that it should have been accepted, because that's a lot of people attending the rally to cover. And it doesn't seem like it was covered very well. So those are some of the questions, of course, we're going to want the answers to tomorrow when the Secret Service director is going to answer some of the questions that all of us have that have yet to be answered by our government. Has been answered. The media has done, I believe, a fantastic job on this case. They've given us answers, but we don't know if it's 100% true. But they have uncovered some things that perhaps our FBI and our Secret Service didn't want uncovered, but nonetheless, they've done a fantastic job. This is from CBS.
Hundreds of people gathered Friday for the funeral of the firefighter who was killed during the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump last Saturday. Corey Comparator was laid to rest at an emotional service in Buffalo Township, Pennsylvania, where he had served as its fire chief. Law enforcement joined the funeral procession while residents waved flags in his honor. Meanwhile, federal authorities are still investigating the events that led up to the shooting. The Secret Service is facing significant criticism for its failure to prevent the tragedy, with its director heading to Capitol Hill next week for questioning. And Anna Schechter joins us now. She's CBS News' senior coordinating producer for crime and public safety. Anna, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle is going to be in the hot seat when she goes to Capitol Hill before the House Oversight Committee on Monday. What can we expect from this?
There is so much anger and so much rage even that we've seen in some of these videos where particularly Republican lawmakers approached her at the RNC and filmed themselves saying, we want accountability, we want answers, how could you let this happen? So I think it's going to be a very fiery hearing on Monday with really tough questions. So far, her bosses are supporting her, but this is a very, very tense time for the Secret Service.
And meanwhile, everybody is looking at what went wrong, and the CBS News Confirmed team has been analyzing the events that led up to Saturday's shooting. Can you break down for us what happened here?
So we've created a graphic, and the CBS News Confirmed team has done an incredible job mapping out the location of the shooter with respect to these two Secret Service snipers. In one case, we saw that there was actually a tree that probably made it difficult for the closer sniper team to take the shot. It was actually, we believe, the other sniper team that took the shot. But we also know in this graph, if you look to the lower right-hand side of their screen, you'll see that's where the local tactical team was stationed on the second floor.
That's outside of the
That is outside
the perimeter.
Exactly, outside the perimeter, the secured perimeter that the Secret Service had control of. We also know that Secret Service, in the middle of the day, around 1:30 p.m., met with the local sniper. So they knew this was the plan. They were supposed to be on that second floor, looking out through windows, trained on the rally crowd, looking for suspicious people. And in fact, it was the sniper who noticed the suspicious person, noticed the shooter, took a photo of him, and when he pulled out a rangefinder, that's when he did radio out. There is a suspicious individual with a rangefinder. The key thing, though, he didn't radio, he did not know that he had a gun. So to me, that's where this investigation is going. How did he get a gun?
But he was looking through a scope at that point, right?
He was looking through a scope, but they didn't see that he had a gun. So it was alarming. They were worried. They were radioing out. They actually pulled back some local police officers who were working traffic to come and help. That's when we had the two officers go. One hoisted the other up. He was hanging on by the roof,
right,
made eye contact with the shooter. The shooter trained the rifle on him. He fell back and actually got injured. And at that point, that's when the first time that there was a radio message that the shooter actually had a gun. Was the gun stored on the roof? Was it stored somewhere else in the building? These are big questions that still are unanswered in this investigation.
And we appreciate.
You know, when we hear these facts, if they are facts that the media is presenting, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You know something? I was in my NYPD career, I was in anti-crime. A unit was one of the best units, probably the best unit on the NYPD. Every precinct had an anti-crime unit, and then there was a citywide street crime unit. It was the most effective unit in the history of the NYPD, I believe. And one of the things you learned from working in anti-crime is you learned how to read body language. And you could almost predict what someone was going to do before they did it. And this training, Secret Service agents have to have this instinct, this sixth sense. How did anyone even look at this guy and not realize he was up to no good? I mean, very really simple to do, especially if you're experienced. And as I said, as an anti-crime cop, as an anti-crime sergeant, I could look at people and say, yeah, let's stay on this guy, you know? This guy, and then he is a rangefinder. No one finds that suspicious in their history of guarding political figures, guarding locations. They don't find it that someone with a rangefinder, that's a bit suspicious. You know, the FBI has a sheet when they talk about active shooters. And one of the things that they talk about is some of the characteristics that active shooters display. And not all of them apply to this one, but some of them do. And I'm going to read from this. According to the FBI, there is no single warning sign, checklist, or algorithm to identify a mass shooter before an attack. However, a complex combination of behaviors and interactions with bystanders in the time leading up to an attack could identify potential shooters. This is right out of the FBI's active shooter profile. The FBI has created a profile of a likely active shooter. This profile includes characteristics such as a young white male who feels entitled and has been bullied, access to guns in the home, an honor roll student from a good community. All three of these apply to this shooter. Intolerant attitudes towards racial or religious minorities, that's undetermined. Possess a superiority attitude. Poor coping skills. Exhibits distorted thinking relative to the negativity he perceives from others. So this shooter, Thomas Crooks, exhibits many of those characteristics. And he had 3 clips, 3 magazines, if you will, with 30 rounds each in them. That's 90 rounds he had. Do you think his intention was to just try to take out Trump, or was he going to kill numerous people at this event? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. He was an active shooter. And one of the things that we know about active shooters is that they keep killing until they are stopped, and in many cases, they commit suicide. So surely the snipers for the Secret Service are huge heroes in this, that they were able to stop him very quickly. He got off 6 shots, caused a great deal of damage. However, if it weren't for these snipers, there would have been many more people disabled, murdered by this would-be assassin, who also, we can call him what he is, an active shooter. Now, did he act alone? And I, being an investigator, having 16 years in the NYPD Detective Bureau, I think it's too early. I think the jury is still out on that one. I think the FBI probably has discovered many things that we are not privy to yet. But did he act alone? Many people are suggesting there was another shooter at the location. I don't know if there's any evidence of that yet. There's people telling me, oh, there was different sounds of ballistics, different gunfire, the sounds of different guns. But again, there was 2 snipers that fired, all right? In addition, the Thomas Crooks fired 6 rounds that we know of, okay? So I'm not saying there's a second shooter, but what I'm saying is I think he could have had help in the way of coaching, teaching, and explaining how to possibly defeat law enforcement in regards to a drone, a recon drone at the location. That is almost too hard to believe that actually happened, that he had a drone that scoped out the location and enabled him to see exactly everything that was there and the things that he would have to do to defeat the security. A drone. Wouldn't you think that in a rally like this, that the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, would have banned drones from this location? Would have banned it. And any drone seen up in the air could have been shot down. I mean, amazing to me that this occurred. How about a physical recon? There were reports that he drove around onto the site on his bicycle. So not only did a drone recon, but a physical recon of the location, and not just on that day, but prior days before the rally. We know that he took off from work so that he could do this evil deed, right? There's other investigative information that I'm sure that the FBI has, and hopefully that they will share this information with Director Cheatle so that she can do a competent testimony in front of Congress. And when she's asked questions, she will have the answers to the questions rather than to say, oh, this is under investigation. I'm not able to speak upon that. If she does that, I think that's going to create more suspicion by the public. You know, today, or 11 hours ago, Fox News had an outstanding panel on that spoke to some of these questions that I'm raising right now. I'm going to play a little bit of this. One of them happens to be a former NYPD Inspector Morrow, and he's a very knowledgeable guy. I'm going to play some of this right now.
Balboni, retired FBI Special Agent John Iannarelli, and former NYPD Inspector and Fox News contributor Paul Morrow, who is live in Butler. And Paul, let's start with you. It's been a week. We've learned a lot. We've got a working theory about possibly that the rifle was hidden, and also about drones being flown by Crooks possibly hours before the event. What can you tell us?
Well, in terms of the investigation, and let's switch into that mode, almost certainly what's going to happen here is there's going to be a review of policy. And this stuff can be very dry and interminable, but it's what matters. And they're going to look on Capitol Hill as they talk to Director Cheatle about whether or not Secret Service protocols were followed. The estimation was there was going to be 20,000 plus people here, plus 7,000 vehicles. They expected a big crowd in blazing heat. From what I can glean, there was about 80 law enforcement personnel deployed. The resources likely were not enough, and I can tell you that at least one township here offered resources and was rebuffed. Another town police department.
So this former inspector for the NYPD, Morrow, directly contradicts what Homeland Security head Alejandro Mayorkas said about personnel. He said, oh, there's plenty of personnel. We never turned down. Morrow is saying that there was not enough personnel to secure this location. So who's telling the truth?
Department here, the Butler Town Police Department, I spoke directly to them. They were never called for help and could have provided help, and in fact would have. So they're going to be mapping the procedures that should have been in place. They're going to look at the operations plan to see if it accounted for what it's supposed to account for. Were the meetings held? Were the site surveys done? And then they're going to see where Director Cheatle, who was up in Aspen at the time for a conference, they're going to see if those protocols were followed by her team.
Well, that's a great point, Paul, and it is certainly going to be a heated confrontation with members of Congress and Director Cheatle on Monday. I think, John, you were an agent. You know that the agents that were on site must feel unbelievably frustrated that this has happened. But as the finger pointing goes on with both the number of resources they had and the protocols that were or weren't followed, how do you see it?
You know, Griff, Paul's exactly right. They obviously did not deploy enough resources, and a lot of mistakes appeared to have been made. And tragically, it could have taken the president's life, and it took the life of another person. We need to take a look at this from the top down. How big was the perimeter they set up, and why was it cut off where it was when you have that building that they thought was important enough that they have law enforcement officers at, yet outside the perimeter that was established? We need to look at this immediately because there's a lot of events coming up, including the one in Michigan today.
One thing, Michael, that has really stood out to me, and we can show you the timeline we put together for you. You can see the hour here. It begins at 5:10 p.m. Crooks is first identified as this person of interest. And then, of course, just...
That is bothersome to me. So 510, he's first identified as a person of interest. Why did someone not be glued to his ass? You know, that's policing 101. You got a suspicious guy, you have someone glued to him. He doesn't get a free rein. How did that happen? That's horrendous that they allowed this guy. Oh, he's suspicious. Oh, really? And the former president is going to speak in another hour or so. What are we doing about this suspicious guy? You either lock his ass down or you get him out of there. I mean, it's just incredible that this is even being spoken about. Sana Elise Hoth Johnson, thank you for the NOK 1400 super sticker. Very much appreciated. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit that like button. It's free to subscribe. And we're growing, and we want you to be part of our YouTube family. If you want to contribute financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel membership with Cannon, 5 different levels. And we appreciate all of our friends, our family, and all the people that follow Police Off the Cuff real crime stories. So yes, this is unbelievable. When we look at this timeline, let's go back to the timeline.
Just over an hour later, Crooks fires the weapon. You can see all these things. But before the shot, at 6:02, Trump takes the stage. Michael, why was he allowed to take that stage? How is that the case?
So I've gotten a chance to work on national security events, particularly in 2008 when Pope Benedict came to New York City, and the Secret Service took over everything. They were the ones who were literally giving instructions, telling everybody where they should be. I am getting more and more concerned about who this shooter is. The fact that he used a drone, the fact that he has encrypted accounts, the fact that he was on nobody's radar screen. In many ways, from a protective detail perspective, that is your worst case scenario. If someone comes out of the blue, is on nobody's radar screen, and then does these things, which seems to indicate some tradecraft. The thing about having somebody who just comes out of the blue is typically they're complete amateurs and they have no tradecraft whatsoever. But this guy looks like he's got pre-operational surveillance with a drone, and now doesn't have any fingerprints on or profile on social media, and is able to come in and almost take out the president. Boy, a lot of questions starting to emanate from this guy's behavior.
That's right, Michael. And you rightly point out this was a national special security event, an NSSE. There are nothing that ranks higher in terms of the amount of security that needs to be done in the case of an upcoming NSSE. And we mentioned the drone. Congressman Michael Waltz talked a little bit about those accounts. Paul, I want you to listen here to what Waltz had to say.
Other things are coming out, like the shooter had 3 encrypted accounts overseas. At the same time, we're having an Iranian plot. So, I mean, I think this is going to go much broader, much deeper, but the agents are going to hold her to account. Their lives on the line, and she was not giving the resources they were requesting.
Fox reached out. The FBI authorities are not waving us off of that statement by Waltz there. What do you make of it, Paul?
So I'm going to hold my fire a little bit on that because I don't think we have enough facts. There are apps that you can load, that anybody can load onto their phone to use for communication that are encrypted and are in fact held overseas. And so technically they would qualify as to what the FBI is saying. Many of us have them. So I don't know exactly what is meant by that, but I will say this. There is a paradigm that I saw very often doing counterterrorism work for 15 years where it's a very low-level operation, but it's very cheap, and it's essentially catfishing. An entity overseas gets to somebody in America who is leading a kind of slipping down life, gets into their head, and essentially weaponizes them. And you know what? At this point, and some of the stuff we're hearing, maybe you do have to consider it a possibility because somebody who's susceptible, who is apparently prone to depression, who is doing some of the online searches that we've heard about, he might have been a vulnerable target, and somebody might have spun him up.
Well, unfortunately,
I think that is a great point by Paul Morrow, former NYPD inspector. How do we know he wasn't radicalized via his own computer, in encrypted way, on his phone? Someone getting this guy, getting something into his head, hatred into his head, ideology perhaps into his head. What are some of the things that concern me about this shooter, Thomas Crooks, is how he learned how to do all these things. The recon, the drone, sneaking the gun into a secure location. How did he know how to do that? How did someone tell him how to do that? How was the gun snuck in there? A rangefinder, and bringing it in, and he's not challenged over that. Getting up on the roof, just the whole surveillance he did and the counterintelligence he did against the Secret Service is a 20-year-old kid. And I know people sometimes when I use that term kid, people get upset. He's a man, And yeah, okay, he's a man. Let's call him a 20-year-old man. But you look at his face here, to me, he looks like a kid. Yes, he's a man. He's 20 years old. Sort of geeky, right? Little geek, smart, has a 2-year engineering degree. Could he have figured out all these things by himself? How about improvised explosive devices that it was reported that he had 2 of them, one in his car and one in his parents' home where he lived, and a remote control device to set them off. Yeah, I guess an average person could learn how to do that, can build an IED based on what they could learn on the internet. He's an engineer, right? He could probably figure out how to build a remote control device to set off the IED. And was the IED specifically to create a distraction, or was it designed to hurt or kill law enforcement upon their response? These are some of the questions I have. And apparently in some of his very small web presence, he also espoused the hatred for Biden and, of course, Trump and Republicans. But the big difference between espousing the hatred for Biden and Trump is that he acted on his hatred for Trump by shooting him. So a big difference in that way. But was he, again, and we looked at that FBI profile, allegedly he was bullied in school, right? Look, many people are bullied that don't become active shooters, right? Access to guns. Did his parents, who are both counselors, when I read that, I couldn't believe that. They're both counselors, like mental health counselors. They didn't recognize a problem with their son, so much that the father allowed his son to take his AR-15 like rifle to the range. Allegedly wasn't going to the range. He was going to a rally where he was going to try to assassinate the former president. So all of these things are big questions we all have. And of course, in the investigation, we all want the deep dive, of what does that mean? Okay, we want to interview as many people as we can who know Thomas Crooks, who had interactions with Thomas Crooks. Of course, his workplace, which was a nursing home where he was a dietary aide. Friends, does he have any friends? Neighbors, of course, his parents. Now we want to look to his phone. We want to look to his computer. Was he on social media? We want to search warrants on his car. Look, of course, how about his financial situation? Did he have an influx of money, unexplained money coming into his account that we cannot explain? That's a question that no one's asked yet. Was someone paying him to do this? Well, then we would see perhaps a huge deposit in his bank account, right? Supposedly there was some mail delivered to his house of hazardous materials. What was that? Was that the bomb-making material being delivered to his house? So all of these questions, we need answers, and that's some of the questions that hopefully will be asked tomorrow of Director Cheatle when she goes before Congress. Let's go back to Paul Morrow on Fox News here.
we are, as best we know, it hasn't changed. Crooks's parents, and you were looking live there at their home, are cooperating. Maybe we learn more on that. John, let me ask you, if you were a member of Congress in Monday's hearing, what would you ask? What would be your question to Director Cheatle?
The number one question is, what are your limitations? Why are the resources not being deployed to keep important figures in our government safe? Have they asked for more resources? And are you reaching out to extend resources to numerous police agencies? We heard earlier that agencies had not been asked. Has the FBI been asked to assist with cases like this? There's a lot of different sources out there that we can use to keep people safe, and the Secret Service doesn't appear to be doing that.
And Michael, I'll give you the last word. I've just got about 10 seconds. What would you ask Cheatle?
And so why did you go to the Republican National Convention, but yet not answer the questions of senators who are going to be voting on your budget? Why are you taking this in your own personal way? This is so serious. Nobody should be talking about this from the Secret Service except to congressional investigators, the Homeland Security Inspector General's office. This is too important to just show up and try to make this a political response. Completely inappropriate.
I suspect she will be asked about that. Michael Balboni, John Iannarelli, Paul Morrow, thank you very much.
So I thought that was a pretty good panel. I think they really understood what they were talking about. Let's go to the chat for a second. Andrea, he's not a kid. He's not fully mature, but enough of making excuses and leniency, how I feel. I didn't think I was doing that, but I'm just saying from his picture, which is actually, I think this picture you're looking at right here is actually from like 2 years ago. So it's like his high school picture. So he's 20 years old. So you can decide whether you think he's a kid or a man. Look, I have two sons, one's 32 and one's 29. They'll always be kids to me, and I think most parents feel that way. Cass, he had help in some degree. Who was in the window? I think there was someone chilling him out. He had some form of protection, right? He just goes about things and not anxious about being seen. Look, the jury is still out on whether Thomas Crooks acted alone or had help. We don't know. J. Callie Beals, his old school counselor, debunked the bullying. Well, design rhythm, that happens a lot with therapist kids. They're the last to get help. Prison for psychiatrists from the chat. 2 mental health counselors. Why am I not surprised? Denise Green, any statement from the parents? I have seen nothing. I haven't seen any statements from the parents, although they have agreed to cooperate. Spacey 11, they don't give out those lists. They just have 6 different programs to stalk you and then pin an assassination on some random, I don't know. JD from the chat, I would suspect an alphabet organization would have helped him more than, say, Iran. I suspect those organizations, see, this is why, JD, I think that we need to get the truth out, because there is many conspirator theories out there, and we don't know. So we can't just throw that out there. Mary Lynn Mayra Manetta. They reported because the roof was slanted, the FBI couldn't be up there. Excuse me. They reported because the roof was slanted, the FBI couldn't be up there. But look at the roof style on the building where the police were. That's more slanted. Yeah, I think that was a poor excuse for the Secret Service director to say they didn't put anyone up there because the roof was slanted. I think that was pretty dumb, I think. I don't think that was at all, a viable excuse that anyone took to heart like that. Is that really an excuse? Is that what you're really saying? So I want to play this from CNN. I want to give all networks a little shot here, so we're not just listening to Fox. Let's put this up on the screen from CNN.
Inspector General has opened an investigation into how the Secret Service secured the campaign rally where there was an attempt on Donald Trump's life. The FBI also investigating the incident. CNN also has an exclusive interview with the Secret Service director. CNN's Whitney Wild's been on top of all of this, joins us now. Good morning, Whitney.
Good morning, John. This is a notable development in what will be a long list of investigations as the Secret Service answering more questions today. When you said that local law enforcement was responsible for that building, what did you mean by that?
So Secret Service respects local law enforcement, and we could not do our job either investigatively or on our protective mission without them. In Pennsylvania, in fact, on that same day, they were also working the First Lady trip and a vice presidential trip. So I understand the constraints that they're under, and as I said earlier, we couldn't do our job without them. At that particular site, we divided up areas of responsibility, but the Secret Service is solely responsible for the design and the implementation and the execution of the site. And that's what I was trying to stress, was that we just divided up areas of responsibility, and they provided support to those areas of responsibility.
And you mentioned the First Lady's also event in Pittsburgh. You guys have a lot of areas to cover. Were any assets diverted from the former president's rally to her detail?
No, there were no assets from the Secret Service that were diverted at all.
Okay, so no one swapped out any of the posts, for example?
No.
Okay. CNN, of course, has reporting that the Secret Service increased security for former President Trump because of a credible threat from Iran. I've spoken with several people who look at the perimeter, hearing that news, look at the perimeter and say, how, knowing that there was a credible threat against the former president, how could that perimeter be so small that it excluded a building just 150 yards away from the podium?
I can't get into the specifics of any threats, but obviously with all of our protectees, we're...
Again, right now she just said that. I hope that's not the tenor tomorrow at testimony before Congress, that she's going to hide behind, I can't get into any specifics about any threat. Well, you better get into the specifics, because a former president was shot and 3 other people were shot during this rally. People don't want to hear those, cut answers that, what are you protecting other than anonymity of the mistakes?
Constantly monitoring the threats that are out there, and we design our security plan based on that, also depending on the venue and the environment that we're in. And on that particular day, a full advance had been completed, but this is also why we are doing an internal review, and we look forward to the external review as well. And obviously, if there are things that we need to change about our policies or our procedures or our methods, we are certainly going to do so.
Was that perimeter too small?
The perimeter encompassed the area that we needed to secure for the event that we had on that day. What happened is a terrible incident and should never happen. And we are obviously going to make sure that moving forward, we take whatever lessons that come out of this and adjust accordingly.
Was every element, every part of his, from the intelligence to the counter assault team, to the detail agents, the shift agents, every element top to bottom of the advance in the operation, was every element increased after you learned of this credible threat?
What we increased was what we felt was appropriate for the former president and for that particular event on that day. We have been increasing the assets and the resources and the staffing that we have been providing to the former president since he was a presidential candidate and then the presumptive nominee. That's what I can tell you.
That sounds like a no.
I am not saying a no at all. I'm saying that we have continued to increase the resources that we've been providing to the former president.
Director Cheatle told us that she did speak with the agents and officers who responded, telling them that in what would be the most difficult moment for any Secret Service agent or officer's career, in that moment, those men and women who were there on scene did their job flawlessly. Back to you.
Yeah, well, we'll find out with this Inspector General report and the number of investigations that now seem to be ongoing. Whitney Wild, great reporting. Thank you very much. Sarah?
Again, we are following this breaking news where the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General has opened an investigation into how the Secret Service secured the Trump campaign rally. But we're also learning of more threats. CNN national security analyst and former director of the National Intelligence, James Clapper, is joining me right now. Thank you, sir, for joining us this morning. Mr. Clapper, what are the things that law enforcement is learning that would trigger this kind of warning? That there is a much more heightened threat during these very volatile campaign times?
Well, to begin with is of course, the Iranian threat although we don't know any details about the vintage, the reliability, validity of the human source in question. Was it corroborated? I think now the concern is, will there be copycat attempts in sort of retaliation against the attempt against former President Trump? So this would, I think, infer a potential heightened threat to the president and others in the administration, as you have copycats or those who feel that they have to retaliate for the attempt against President Trump. So this, by however you measure.
That's, to me, where's he getting that from? This guy was, I think, a former CIA official, and he's, really, so he thinks like the other side's going to retaliate against Biden because someone shot at Trump. These people are wackos that do this. In this instance, this guy was a potentially active shooter. Do we know whether he was radicalized, perhaps by on his computer or by his phone? We don't know that yet. The investigation is way too early to say right now. Taylor from the chat, I think the powers that be flooded the news cycle with ridiculous statements, so when the truth comes out, even though bad people will say, oh, okay, that's better than we first thought. Mind games. Lieutenant Hans Schultz IV, Esquire. The Biden regime represents old, habitual liars and diapers, out of touch with reality, who think endless wars, big lies, and more millions are much more important than morals. Well, I'm not gonna just read the rest of that. Carrie, the fact Biden tweeted that it's time to put a bullseye on Trump a week before he was almost assassinated is enough for me to question what really happened here. But Carrie, that was said. It shouldn't have been said. But Trump says some things also that are can be seen as raising the temperature of the discord. And I think in the political world, political land we live in, it's almost like you can't talk politics anymore because people get all upset and people get. We used to be able to disagree. And it seems like we can't any longer disagree. That's why politics is taken off the menu at the family gatherings these days. Mary Lynn Maramoneta, the shooter took a course on how to use a gun and how to shoot a gun. These pictures fooling around with him with this particular man at the shooting range, learning how to shoot. Mary Lynn Maramoneta, I think people in Pennsylvania is big time hunting country, big time gun country. I think most young people in Pennsylvania learn how to shoot very, very early in their lives. And I don't know if, in fact, he was training to shoot with a gun. There's reports that he tried out for his high school rifle team and he wasn't a good enough shot to make it. I don't know if that's true or not. Hopefully we will get the truth in a published report and we'll find out. Lollipop, what if any, from the chat, it's Secret Service job and their job alone to protect their target. It's their failure. End of story. There's a lot of failures here, though. You're right. Ultimately, it comes down to the Secret Service. It was their responsibility. They were the ones in charge of protecting a former president. Roseanne, it's the Oversight Committee. She better have answers. Well, something. Much of these congressional hearings, if you ever watched them before, they're theatrical. They're theater. And it's one group attacking another group and nothing gets done afterwards. So I'm not convinced that A, she will be transparent in her testimony, and B, that this is not just going to be a theatrical presentation in attacking the head of the Secret Service, who apparently doesn't have answers or hasn't given answers yet. Schmitty from the chat just got a breaking news text from Fox. It reads, Secret Service skipped police briefing before Trump shooting. See, these are all, Schmitty, thank you for that. These are all the little tidbits we get, and hopefully we'll hear some of these questions and answers tomorrow when she's interviewed. Cass, I have watched hearings in Congress. Garland, Mayorkas, Ray, and Truth is always dodged. Yeah, I've watched a lot of them too, and as I said, many of them get to be a little bit theatrical. Carrie from the chat, Who's going to investigate the FBI and Secret Service? Because after the way we've seen them go after Trump and now almost get him killed, there is no trust. You know, hopefully there will be a third party that investigates this, that oversees this, because many people do not trust the government to do a thorough and honest investigation of this, and not clouded by politics. Jacqueline Jacobson, the director of the Secret Service, needs to resign. She did not do her job, which was to assure that all Secret Service agents are capable and competent. Wally Whipp, didn't he park his car right by the entrance to the glassworks, right by the mounted ladder, making it easy to plant the gun for when he later climbed that ladder? Wally Whipp, so far, no one is offering that up as to how he planted that gun, how he got that gun in there. It's obvious that he did that, but no one is saying that they know how he did that. Taylor from the chat, who has point of contact between Trump immediate perimeter of agents and local law enforcement? I doubt they were all on one channel. That would be a lot of chat and distraction. Did Secret Service point relay the threat? You know, Taylor, I'm glad you pointed that out, because one of the worst failures in this was the failure of communication. And by communication, I mean the communication between the police and the Secret Service. Someone or multiple people should have had the radios to be on the same frequency as the Secret Service. So in real time, they could have told them about this shooter, about this threat, because apparently much time went by before that little visual you see there of Thomas Crooks on the roof taking aim. That was seen, you know, supposedly 2 minutes went by where they had warnings and they couldn't get directly to the Secret Service snipers. If you don't think that's a mistake, that is outrageous. That is ridiculous, you know. And when they look at the mistakes made in this case, I think that surely communication has to be one of them. Let's go back to James Clapper here.
It represents a growing threat.
I am curious to see if that is ginned up by what we're seeing online with the blaming of Democrats, which there's no evidence at all of that. The person who did this attempted assassination was a registered Republican. But you're hearing on the stage as well from some of the Republican leaders using the word they cannot take him out. They tried to kill him, inferring that it's the Democrats. Is this something that would create an even more heightened threat because of what leaders are also saying?
Well, yes, it would. That's why it would really be good if everyone would abide by the appeals made by both President Biden and former President Trump to tone down the rhetoric, to cool it. And so, given the nature of polarization in this country and the wild conspiracies on social media, that sort of rhetoric just feeds that, and I think heightens the intensity of resentment on the part of some to retaliate because of blaming the Democrats, for example, which right now is not helpful.
You know, over the years, there have been so many assassination attempts and assassinations in our past political history, especially in the 60s. You had, you know, President Kennedy, Dr. King, Bobby Kennedy. When you look at what happens during a volatile campaign, do you always see these threats go up?
Well, not like this case. We've certainly had, unfortunately, a very checkered history with political violence in this country. When we had the incident that happened Saturday, it certainly brought back very vivid memories of mine when President Kennedy was assassinated in November 1963. I was a young lieutenant then in the Air Force in Texas, not far from Dallas.
So that's James Clapper speaking about assassinations. You know, surely what we all want to know here is we just want to know answers. And many of the questions that we have should have been answered way earlier than tomorrow. And I have serious doubts whether many of our questions will be answered tomorrow. Again, this is a congressional hearing. Director Cheatle, who you see on the screen there, she will not answer all the questions. She will purposely dodge many questions, I believe, because this is not a proud moment for the Secret Service. This is not their proudest moment in their history, and I think that in regards to that, we're going to come away tomorrow unsatisfied with the truth coming out of this hearing, because I've seen many of these hearings, and they don't always put forth the truth. So we'll see tomorrow. Let me play this from Fox, another government official talking about this incident.
Let's bring in member of the House Oversight Committee, Republican Texas Congressman Pat Fallon. Congressman, thank you for being with us today. So on Monday, what are you hoping and what are you wanting to hear from Cheatle?
Well, Alicia, there's several questions, some big and some small. But first is this: how did a untrained loner, 20 years old, with a week's notice, select the absolute best location to take a shot at President Trump when the entire Secret Service missed it? They didn't secure that location. If you look at a satellite image, when there's 6 buildings, Alicia, that are problematic. The number one most problematic building is the AGR building, where he chose. So he figured it out, but the entire Secret Service couldn't. Who approved the security plan? Who was the agent on site that day? Why was President Trump allowed to even take the stage when there was a person of interest with a rangefinder that law enforcement had lost sight of? After the shots, why wasn't President Trump whisked off that stage immediately? Because God forbid there had been a second shooter, or this had been a foreign nation state trying this, it would have had a very different outcome.
Right. The management of resources sounds like it's just going to be a huge highlight in questioning. One thing you did say, you talked about Crooks being untrained. We had an interesting interview that Griff did earlier in the last hour with Michael Balboni, former New York State Homeland Security advisor. Listen to what he had to say.
This guy looks like he's got pre-operational surveillance with a drone, and now doesn't have any fingerprints on or profile on social media, and is able to come in and almost take out the president. Boy, a lot of questions starting to emanate from this guy's behavior.
How does that hit you, Congressman, the possibility that this is someone who actually may have had training and really wasn't an amateur?
Oh, it's absolutely chilling. And that's what we have to and conduct this investigation. It has to be incredibly thorough, and it needs to be swift. Because if there's a few different possibilities, Alicia, let's just talk about, let's be frank, well beyond honesty. He either was somebody that acted alone, or he acted with others, or this was some kind of a deep state conspiracy to leave President Trump exposed. I don't believe it's the latter, but we need to ensure that it's not. And that's why we need to conduct this investigation. That's why we're doing it as soon as we get back Monday morning. But you also have to ask, why were the majority of the president's security detail that day not Secret Service? That we've just learned that only 22 Secret Service agents. You cannot secure the president of the United States, former president and leading candidate to be the next president, with 22 Secret Service agents when you're talking about a crowd of 20, 30 plus thousand. It's ridiculous.
Well, you and your colleagues are going to be very busy this week. Chet Pergram was talking about it as well. In addition to the hearing that you will be in attendance for on Monday, you have one on Tuesday with Pennsylvania officials, right? And then on Wednesday, FBI Director Christopher Wray will testify before the House Judiciary Committee. This is in stark contrast to the on-camera briefings that we have seen from all of those in charge from the various departments of our government. Zero on-camera briefings. We are 1 week out. The American people have yet to hear any of the leadership from these places come forward and just talk to them.
Yeah, Alicia, you make a great point. They're ducking and covering. I asked the FBI for access to the Butler site for tomorrow, and they didn't respond at first. And then they said, well, it's an active crime scene. You can't come. I'm a member of Congress sitting on the Oversight Committee about to question the director of the Secret Service, and they're not going to give me access. That makes absolutely no sense. I have the top security clearance. Why not? Because I want to do my job for my constituents and the American people to find out what happened. Because you know what, Alicia, we can't ever have this happen again to anyone, right. Democrat, Republican, Independent. We have got to protect our principles. We have to protect the folks that are running for the presidency, or we have a banana republic. And it infuriates me that they're just trying to, really, it seems like, covering their backside instead of finding out the truth.
So, folks, that's tomorrow, of course, is going to be the interview with Secret Service Director little Kimberly Cheatle. And we'll see, we'll hear some of our questions, hopefully, will be answered. Some may not be answered. Tomorrow evening at 9 p.m., I'm going to have this woman come on who's her name is Judy Powell. She's a former NYPD Deputy Commissioner who is an expert in crisis communication and media relations, and really has represented police departments all over this country, worked with Bill Bratton, of course, worked with the NYPD, in messaging and getting the message out quickly so that what's happening in this case doesn't become the rule. You know, what's happening in this case is we're not getting the information out there quickly. And as a result, it's not very clear. And of course, the conspiracy theorists are all over the place. And hopefully tomorrow's interview of the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheatle, will clear many of these things up. And maybe it won't, but it's at least one step to apprising the public of what occurred. So, folks, this has been an afternoon Sunday show of Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. We'll be on again tomorrow night at 9. Again, I told you with that this woman, Judy Powell, who is a communications expert, and it should be a real interesting show talking about the messaging in regards to this case. So, folks, everyone have a wonderful Sunday, and I'll see you tomorrow night at 9. Talk to you soon. God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.